Well, a young boy was spending Christmas week with his grandparents, and on Christmas Eve, the whole extended family went to church. While they were waiting to go in, the child checked all the stuff on the walls. When he came to a group of pictures of men in uniform, he asked his grandfather, "Who are those guys?" His grandfather replied, "Why, those are photos of our boys who died in service." The little guy began to cry. His father picked him up, hugged him, and said, "What's wrong?" Tearful tyke sobbed, "I want to go home. Boys don't die in our church service back home." Last week we lifted up and we talked about Mary, the mother of Jesus, and her courage and the hope in her song, the Magnificat, all that brings. And on this third Sunday of Advent, we're lighting a candle for joy. We're celebrating joy. You probably notice that the candle is rose color. The rose color is meant to represent the joy that we get from the hope of peace and the love that the other candles and Sundays in Advent signify, all of them relating to the coming of Jesus into the world on Christmas Day. Today's candle is the one that stands out for its different color, and usually I get asked once or twice what the colors of Advent mean, especially that candle. The purple one originally stood for penitence. That harks back to an earlier church tradition that commemorated Advent as a sort of mini Lent. So the purple candles originally were meant to remind churchgoers of the need to repent. But nowadays we tend to think of their purpleness as representing the sovereignty and the royalty of Christ. And that makes much more sense than penitence. Penitence is something few Christians in our culture think about with respect to this season, especially since Advent is now celebrated around peace and hope and joy and love as we move toward the promise of Christmas and the birth of God's light incarnate, Christ. So nowadays, Advent is, as a modern theologian and popular writer Diane Butler Bass puts it, a time of waiting, listening, and preparing for the birth of Jesus. It's a time of waiting, of expectation, of hope in the darkness. And before I get further along, I want to point out that that's where the joy comes in. The rose, the pink color of hope in the darkness. Great hope. That's why we have one candle to remind us of that. Dark is the absence of light, and therefore the absence of color. In the Advent season, what many call the Christmas season or the holiday season, is anything but missing light and color. There is light and color galore. There's a lot of color at Christmas, and the Advent colors are not the only ones that are symbolic. Typically we think of green and red as Christmas colors. Green's presence is meant to be a reminder in the dead and the darkness of winter that spring exists, and its light always begins its month-long return after the darkest day of the year. That's winter solstice, which occurs 3 days before Christmas. Jesus, the light of God incarnate, is celebrated as being born that day, Christmas Day. And we remember, too, that in our Christian narratives that the light incarnate arose 3 days after a very dark time. The green of spring is in the holiday to remind us the light always returns, and so hope is a significant part of Advent. We also have red in Christmas. It's there to remind religious folks that the green hope of new life came with a cost. Jesus' blood spilled by earthly powers, part of Jesus paying the ultimate sacrifice for us. There's lots of other colors at Christmas, like white and gold, both of which represent God's light. There's one other color I want to discuss for a bit. Blue. Purple is normally Advent's main liturgical color, but blue is also sometimes used to distinguish the season from Lent. The UCC website points out this, that while purple is normally Advent's liturgical color, associated both with the sovereignty of Christ and with penitence, deep blue is also sometimes used to distinguish the season from Lent, as the color of the night sky. Blue symbolizes Christ, who in one ancient Advent song is called the dayspring, or source of day. As the color associated with Mary, blue also reminds us that during Advent the church waits with Mary for the birth of Jesus. Well, Jean Mullendorf began putting up our beautiful purple paraments 3 weeks ago. Jean adds a piece each week to grow the awesome display of purple Advent artwork as we get nearer and nearer to Christmas. And then she changes them for Christmas Eve and the 12 days of Christmas to blue paraments. We don't have the blue up on Christmas because of Elvis Presley's song, Blue Christmas. But because blue is a color of hope, and the promise of the sky at dawn, as darkness ends. But you know what? That Elvis song reflects on something. The truth about the holidays that we tend to gloss over or hardly talk about. Blue, you see, is also a word that we use in our culture for sadness and sorrow. And there is that sort of blueness that sets in for a number of us at Christmas. When the holidays roll in, most of us have some shades of blue on the edges of our Christmas season experience. We think of those who died in the service for love of country and God and us. We think of family and friends that are no longer with us or are far away. The loved ones who shared the season with us in our past are not home. Our beloved's presence is missed and mourned. Advent is about love in our lives, and the price of love is sorrow at the loss or absence of those we love. It's natural to miss loved ones during the holidays, where they are an important focal point of the season. And the greater the love, the greater the sorrow can be. And so there is blueness around Christmas. And there could be a lot of blueness like that, but it also comes in other shades and hues, those Christmas blues. Some of us experience blueness during the holiday that's a little harder to explain or talk about. In some families, the holidays bring into relief dysfunction, stress, or memories of it, even post-traumatic effects, family fights, and tension over anything from not enough money to even modestly celebrate, to increased drinking and drunkenness, to outright abuse and violence. When I was a lawyer, I saw an increase in divorce and wrongful employment discharge cases in January as a result of holidays, end of the year, emotional untidiness. Life can be messy, and the messes for some of us can become more visible this time of year. And this negative stuff may seem like a very odd thing, a wet blanket to toss out on the Advent focus on joy, but Joseph's story, the one that we heard Olivia read so nicely, has an angle of sorrow and messiness, even as it has one of great joy, and they're both related. We tend to hear the story as Joseph getting this great news that he gets to help bring in the baby Jesus and name him Emmanuel. But the story actually starts with Joseph in a very distressing situation, a mess. He's found out that Mary, his betrothed, is pregnant, and he knows that child cannot be his. A fledgling family relationship at the start appears to be upset, on the brink of ending. Jesus is going to leave Mary, break off the betrothal. And there's a hint in the angel's message to him that this is more than a little distressing for Joseph. In the translation we heard, Joseph is told not to be afraid, but the Greek word is phobia. It's the same word Gabriel told Mary not to flee in fear. And it actually means to put to flight by terrifying, scare away. To put it bluntly, Joseph is very distressed that Mary is carrying a baby that's not his, and that his relationship with her is in jeopardy, and for all he knows, it's over. In the ordinary course of things, Joseph has reason to think Mary's dumping him, or has been unfaithful, or just doesn't care about the relationship. And while Joseph is being thoughtful by planning to divorce Mary quietly, the relationship at the very start of the telling of this nativity story appears to have a kind of dysfunction that would make blue pretty much anyone's Christmas. Loss of a loved one, loss of trust, loss of face over a divorce, tension. It's pretty heavy stuff. And even after Joseph learns the truth that Mary was not unfaithful and the relationship is not in jeopardy, the next thing he knows in the verses that follow is their family is in grave danger as Herod's government sets out to kill Jesus. And so the whole family has to flee to Egypt until the government changes hands and it's safe to go home. Any way we look at the Christmas story, it begins with blue on the edges for the Holy Family, if not filling the picture completely. We get to know how their story turns out, who this Holy Family is, and that their responses to the apparent tragedies made not only Mary and Joseph better people, but saved Jesus and allowed him to become who and what he becomes, making each of us and all the world a better place. Since 2,000 years later, it's still affecting us. Because a terrified and confused couple in a very blue time stopped and listened and heard God speaking. They were led to protect and nurture and raise a son out of what seemed like a very darkened sky. But instead, turned out to be in the hue of just before dawn blue when light breaks through. To borrow from Diana Butler Bass again, it's the blue from that time when the deepest dark is just infused with the hints of light. Blue holds the promise that the sun will rise and that even after the bleakest, coldest, longest night, the light will break forth as the new day arrives. See, blue may be the color of sadness, but blue is also the color of hope. And actually, the whole arc of the gospel stories have joyful news that is joyful precisely because of the masses of life, personal, relational, communal, and global masses. There is joy precisely because of the delivery of salvation from those messes and the promise of such delivery. There is the great promise and the great hope that we discussed last week. A hope that humanity can get through its messes through Jesus' way by being God's instruments of peace, which we talked about 2 weeks ago, by bringing in love into the world, which we will talk about next week and every week thereafter. The joy to the world at this time of year is not joy because of material gain or personal prosperity. It's joy to the world because Jesus' way offers a path to personal peace and a path to peace to a not so peaceful world on a global and communal scale. It offers an end to the curse of hate and violence and war. It offers a way where no more sins and sorrow grow. It's a way that offers a dawning light in the darkest blue of night. The way Jesus taught and lived and gave boiled down is this: God is love. Believe in love, love, and be loved. God is love. Believe in love. Love, and be loved. The joy is that way greatly lessens personal and societal messes. It shines the light of God, love, into all darkness. In and out of the darkest of times, the light, the Son of God always rises. The coming of dawn, heaven is always breaking in. That's the joy